My wife was cheating on me with my brother, and my parents supported them, so I stopped funding them.
Hello, Reddit community.
I'm 29 years old and residing in San Francisco. I never imagined I'd be sharing this chapter of my life, but here we are. Let me take you through how everything unraveled.
I've always been the dependable one in my family. This isn't a boast, just a statement of fact.
At the age of 12, I began working by mowing lawns in our neighborhood, saving every penny I earned. By 16, I had purchased my own car, while many of my peers received theirs as gifts from their parents. I funded my college education independently, graduating without any debt, and secured a rewarding position as an investment consultant. By 27, I was earning a substantial income. Again, this isn't to flaunt my achievements but to provide context for what followed. My parents viewed me as their personal financial support system from the moment I received my first paycheck. They would call, requesting assistance with bills. Whenever I received a bonus at work, my mother would contact me the same day, saying, "Can you help with the credit cards?" Family supports family. Genuine gratitude was rare. Instead, there were constant requests and guilt trips if I hesitated. I was expected to purchase expensive gifts for everyone during the holidays and fund family vacations. Initially, it was just the airfare, but it inevitably escalated to covering the entire trip. My father needed a new golf club membership because, according to him, it's for business connections, son. It was pure entitlement, but they were family, and I felt an obligation to assist. Then there's my younger brother, Clarence, who's 27. He's the complete opposite of me, a charming individual with little sense of responsibility or work ethic. He dropped out of college twice and couldn't maintain a job for more than a few months. He squandered money on gambling and overpriced items to impress women. My parents considered him perfect. Every failure was dismissed as Clarence finding himself or being free-spirited. My accomplishments were expected and barely acknowledged. When I made the dean's list, I received a nod and a comment like, "That's what you're supposed to do." But when Clarence managed to complete a semester without failing, they threw him a party. I'm not exaggerating. Despite the evident favoritism, I continued to help Clarence, hoping he would eventually learn. I paid off his gambling debts 3 times, totaling over $20,000. When he was evicted, unsurprisingly, I let him stay at my place rent-free for months. I even used my connections to get him jobs, which he invariably messed up. Yes, I was the definition of a pushover, but that's what happens when you're conditioned to be the responsible one. I met my fiancée, Bernice, at a friend's house party 7 years ago. She was 25 at the time and strikingly beautiful, that perfect blend of attractiveness without arrogance, or so I thought. She was studying psychology and aspired to open her own practice someday. Intelligent, ambitious, with a great personality and a captivating presence, the whole package. We connected immediately. Within a year, she moved into my apartment. I covered most of our expenses so she could focus on grad school without stress. I paid for trips, nice dinners, and designer items she needed for networking events. I believed I was investing in our future together. I genuinely thought we were building something lasting. We got engaged after 4 years, and I was truly happy. I felt like I had found the ideal partner, an intelligent woman who seemed to love me for who I was. Then, things started to change. Clarence and Bernice got along well from the beginning, perhaps too well. I began noticing subtle shifts. She would overdress for family dinners, wearing more makeup than usual. Nothing overtly inappropriate, but noticeable. I'd catch them whispering and laughing at jokes I wasn't privy to. They were constantly texting during family gatherings and often ended up in deep conversations in secluded corners. I confronted Bernice about it once, and she said she was just giving him sisterly advice. I dismissed my concerns as paranoia, thinking that my fiancé and brother having a good relationship was positive. I was completely mistaken. As our wedding date approached, about 3 months prior, I came home early from work one day. My boss had insisted I leave after noticing my exhaustion. I planned to surprise Bernice and perhaps take her to dinner. The surprise was on me, though. She wasn't home, despite telling me she'd be studying all evening for an upcoming certification exam. Initially, I didn't think much of it, assuming she went out for coffee or needed a break. I crashed on the couch and fell asleep. I woke up around 10 p.m. to Bernice quietly sneaking in, wearing clothes I hadn't seen before. I asked where she'd been, and she became defensive, saying she needed to blow off steam with friends due to exam stress. I nodded, sensing something was amiss but choosing to play it cool. Secrets have a way of surfacing. A week after that incident, she was in the shower and left her smartwatch charging on the nightstand. A notification popped up. I'm not one to snoop, but when I saw the name, I couldn't ignore it. It was a message from Clarence, "Can't wait to see you again." Just tell in you're meeting Jessica for drinks on Thursday. My blood ran cold. I know I should respect privacy, but when it involves betrayal by your own brother, boundaries blur. I accessed the messages and found everything, hundreds of messages spanning months, photos I wish I could unsee, discussions about their encounters in our home while I was working late, weekend trips disguised as family emergencies, the whole sordid affair. But it got worse. I discovered messages between Bernice and my parents. They knew everything. Not only were they aware, but they actively encouraged it. My mother told Bernice I was boring and that she deserved someone exciting like Clarence. My father expressed happiness that Bernice was a good influence on Clarence. I sat there, phone in hand, reading through the calculated betrayal by everyone I trusted, the woman I loved, my own brother, my parents, all laughing behind my back, using my money, planning a future that didn't include me, at least not in the way I had envisioned. I didn't explode. I didn't shed a tear. I just felt a cold, hard clarity like never before. These people were parasites. I was finally seeing the situation clearly. That's when I decided, no more Mr. Nice Guy. Always saving the day was over. It was time to show them exactly what happens when you push the responsible one too far. I didn't confront Bernice that night. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, and I didn't rage. That's not my way. Instead, I chose a different path, one that required composure. I decided to take everything back silently, without a word. The next morning, while Bernice was still sleeping, I got up before dawn, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat at my desk. I began the process of reclaiming my life. First, I called my bank and opened a new private account. I moved over a significant portion of our joint savings, money I had earned and contributed. She wouldn't have access to it. I didn't take every cent, but I took what was mine. Then I called and began canceling all the wedding arrangements. The venue. The caterers. The photographer. The DJ. The honeymoon accommodations. The dress fittings. The rehearsal dinner. Everything. I didn't care about the non-refundable deposits. That was the price of freedom. By the time Bernice woke up, the inbox we shared for wedding planning was overflowing with cancellation notices. She looked confused, then concerned, and then, slowly, horrified. She started calling vendors frantically, trying to reverse the decisions. I sat across the room, sipping my coffee, calmly watching the chaos unfold. Eventually, she turned to me and asked, "What's going on?" I shrugged and said, "I decided not to marry someone who's been seeing my brother behind my back." She froze. Her face went pale. She tried to deny it at first, but I held up her smartwatch and scrolled through the messages. Her expression changed from denial to disbelief, then panic. She started explaining. Saying she felt lonely. That I worked too much. That Clarence understood her in a way I didn't. I didn't argue. I simply stood up, grabbed my bag, and said, "We'll talk later. I have to get to work." That entire day, my phone buzzed nonstop. Calls from Bernice. From Clarence. From my parents. Messages pleading for forgiveness, explanations, attempts to soften what couldn't be softened. I ignored them all. By lunchtime, I sent out a single group message. "We'll talk tonight. Family dinner. 7 p.m. Be there." I left work early that evening. Stopped for a haircut. Wore my best shirt. There was something satisfying about preparing for war while looking your best. When I arrived at my parents' house, everyone was already there. Bernice was sitting beside Clarence at the dining table, her eyes red and swollen. My parents stood nearby, wearing expressions of forced concern. The dining table was set neatly, as if it were any ordinary family meal. That somehow made it feel more insulting. I didn't wait for them to start the conversation. I pulled a folder from my bag and placed it on the table. In it were printed screenshots of the text messages between Clarence and Bernice, photos, receipts from hotels and restaurants, bank statements showing unauthorized withdrawals from our shared accounts, everything. I had compiled it all. I said nothing and simply gestured to the folder. As they opened it, I watched the realization sink in. Bernice looked away. Clarence's self-satisfied smirk collapsed. My mother covered her mouth in shock. My father sighed heavily and muttered, "Let's talk about this calmly." I had no intention of being calm. When Clarence had the nerve to say, "It's not what it looks like," something inside me cracked. I moved faster than I expected. One moment, I was standing behind my chair. The next, I was across the table, my fist colliding with Clarence's nose. I felt the crunch, heard the gasp from everyone in the room. I don't condone violence. I'm not proud of it.
But in that moment, I didn't feel shame. I felt release. Clarence doubled over, clutching his face. My father stepped in to pull me back. Bernice screamed. My mother pleaded for calm. I fixed my shirt, buttoned my cuff, and straightened my tie. Then I spoke. To Bernice, I said, "You have 72 hours to remove your belongings from my apartment. After that, anything left behind will be donated or disposed of." To my parents, I said, "You will not receive another dollar from me. Not for Clarence's debts. Not for property taxes. Not for family vacations. Nothing." They stared at me in disbelief. "You used me. You enabled him. You covered for both of them. And for what? Because he's more entertaining at dinner parties? Because I was too predictable? Too stable?" No one answered. I continued, "You had a son who never asked for anything. Who supported this family, paid his way, and gave freely. And you chose the one who treated responsibility like a punishment. You get to live with that choice now." My mother started crying. "You're overreacting." My father said, "This can be fixed." Bernice sobbed into a napkin. I looked at each of them. "You're all dead to me now. No second chances. No amends. No forgiveness." Then I turned and walked out of the house I had grown up in, but that no longer felt like home. That night, as I drove through the city, windows down, wind rushing in, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. Over the next few days, I did what I should have done years ago. I completely severed every connection to the people who had taken me for granted. I blocked Bernice's number. I blocked Clarence's. My parents. I set up email filters that sent anything from them straight to the trash. I removed myself from group chats, cut off mutual friends who took their side, and started dismantling every shared financial and logistical thread that linked me to them. It felt like a massive undertaking, but also like therapy. I hired a lawyer to help end the lease on the apartment Bernice and I shared. I closed our joint accounts, canceled all shared credit cards, changed my passwords, and secured my personal information. I even changed my phone number. It was exhausting. But necessary. Like cutting out a cancer. Work became my safe space. I threw myself into it. I stayed late. Came in early. Took on extra projects. The distraction helped. The discipline helped more. By the end of the second week, I had a new apartment lined up. A modern penthouse in downtown San Francisco. More expensive than my old place, but it was mine. Just mine. No one else's fingerprints on the space. I furnished it with things I actually liked. No more compromising on decor. No more nodding along to someone else's vision. No more IKEA couches I secretly hated. And my finances? For the first time in years, they actually grew. Without Bernice's networking expenses, or Clarence's random emergencies, or my parents' short-term loans, I could finally breathe. I reviewed my accounts and felt a quiet sort of joy watching the numbers climb. It's amazing how quickly you can recover when you stop bleeding from 100 invisible cuts. I also joined a boxing gym. The kind where no one cares who you are or what you do for a living. Just you, the gloves, and the work. The head trainer was a retired pro, tough, patient, and relentless. The first week nearly broke me. But I came back. Again and again. Every punch I threw carried a little bit of betrayal with it. Every drop of sweat helped wash it off. Physically, I changed. I dropped weight. Gained muscle. But more than that, I started standing taller. Breathing easier. I even made new friends. Real ones. Guys from the gym. People from work I'd never spent time with because Bernice always had something more important planned. They invited me to game nights, hikes, simple things I hadn't done in years. I started saying yes. It was a strange kind of rebirth. Quiet. Steady. Mine. And for a while, I heard nothing from my family. They seemed to understand that I was serious. That I meant it when I said they were cut off. But news has a way of finding you, even when you try to avoid it. A cousin, one of the few I hadn't cut off, occasionally checked in. She didn't always mean to, but she let things slip. And what she told me was fascinating. Turns out, the beautiful story Bernice and Clarence were living started to fall apart not long after I left the picture. Without me around to bankroll their adventures, reality crept in fast. Clarence, unsurprisingly, spiraled. His gambling returned in full force. The small jobs I'd once helped him secure? Gone.
He started borrowing from less than reputable sources.
He and Bernice argued constantly, mostly about money.
And then he started cheating on her.
Not with just one person.
With several.
And not discreetly. Apparently, he even justified it by saying, "You weren't supposed to be permanent anyway."
Poetic. Bernice, as I heard it, moved out and back in with her parents. Her dreams of opening her own practice had stalled. Word was, she blamed emotional instability and financial sabotage for everything falling apart.
Classic reframing. My parents weren't doing much better.
Without me patching their finances and covering their missteps, they had to face the full cost of years of bad decisions.
Their retirement accounts dried up.
The mortgage Clarence had convinced them to take out twice was defaulting. Their house was slipping into foreclosure.
Credit cards maxed out.
Utilities unpaid. My father, who once used to brag about the stock market, was now working part-time at a sporting goods store.
My mother picked up shifts in the cafeteria at a local elementary school. And Clarence? After draining their emergency savings, he vanished. Again. Changed his number. Deleted social media. No one knew where he went.
I listened to all of this with a calm detachment.
Not happiness, exactly. But certainly not sorrow. Some people call that petty. I call it justice. They had made their choices again and again.
They had turned their backs on the one person who had always been there.
The one who never asked for anything and gave everything. They thought they were choosing something better. Turns out, they just chose louder. And now they were paying for it.
Almost a year to the day after I cut contact, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, especially after changing numbers to avoid the ongoing attempts to reconnect. But I had a new client I was expecting a call from, so I answered.
It wasn't a client.
It was my mother.
"Hi, Alice, it's been a while."
Her voice was quiet, strained. I was surprised to hear it, less because she had found me, and more because part of me truly believed they had given up.
I didn't hang up. Not right away.
There was a strange sense of curiosity.
After all this time, what did she want? She asked if we could meet to talk.
She used words like urgent and important family matter.
Said she and my father just needed a few minutes of my time. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Not because I wanted reconciliation. But because I wanted to look them in the eyes one last time and see what became of them. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe near my office. I arrived early and picked a seat near the window where I could see them walk in.
When they entered, I barely recognized them.
My father, once proud and always well-groomed, looked tired and thin.
His clothes hung on him. His posture was hunched. My mother looked older than I remembered, her hair no longer dyed, face lined with stress. Her sweater was pilled. Her eyes were red. They looked like people who had been through a storm and never made it back to shore. They smiled awkwardly as they approached.
I didn't return the smile. I didn't stand.
I just nodded toward the chairs across from me. My mother reached out, almost instinctively, as if to hug me.
I leaned back. "Let's not pretend," I said. "Just tell me what this is about."
What followed was a story I already knew most of, thanks to my brother. But hearing them say it aloud had a different weight. Clarence, after disappearing, had left behind chaos. Not only had he emptied their accounts, but he'd left them responsible for debts he'd taken out in their names. Their home was in foreclosure. My dad had returned to work minimum wage and couldn't make ends meet. My mother had picked up part-time work, but it wasn't enough.
Their savings were gone. Their credit ruined. They were a few weeks away from being evicted. And they had no one else left to turn to.
"We've made terrible mistakes," my mother said, crying openly.
"We were wrong. About you. About him. About everything."
My father, who had been silent until then, finally spoke. "You were the only one who ever truly held this family together."
"We didn't see it then. But we do now."
There it was.
The moment.
The one I had played over in my head countless times, them realizing what they had done.
The regret. The pleading.
The acknowledgement that they had failed me.
But it didn't feel satisfying. Not really. It just felt hollow. I asked them how much money they were asking for. They looked down. 80,000, my father said quietly. 50 to save the house. 30 to clear the most urgent debt. I looked at them for a long time. Not with anger. Not even with sadness. Just observation.
Like I was watching strangers try to convince me to help them clean up a mess they'd made with someone else.
Let me get this straight, I said.
You encouraged my fiancée to start a relationship with my brother.
You told her I was boring. That she deserved someone more fun.
You spent years taking from me without thanks.
You covered for Clarence while he dug deeper into lies and debt, and now that it's all collapsed, you come to me? They didn't answer. My mother just whispered, "We're still your parents. Family takes care of each other." I actually laughed at that. Family? I repeated. Where was that family when I was working 60-hour weeks to support all of you while you laughed at me behind my back?
My father said something about being desperate, about mistakes, about not knowing what else to do.
I stood up. You made your choice. You bet on Clarence. And you lost. I won't be your safety net anymore. My mother reached across the table.
Please, Ellis, we have nowhere else to go.
I stepped back.
You should have thought about that before you made me the villain in my own life. I dropped a $20 bill on the table to cover their coffee.
Good luck with everything. But don't call me again. Then I turned and walked out. I didn't look back.
It's been almost 6 months since that meeting.
I haven't heard from them again. I've moved forward. New home. New routines.
New relationships built on honesty and shared values, not obligation and guilt. I still work long hours, but now I spend my free time doing what I enjoy. I ride my motorcycle up the coast on weekends.
I volunteer at a local youth mentorship program.
I've even started seeing someone a real connection this time, not built on appearances or convenience.
Every now and then, I think about what might have happened if I had given in. If I had let them pull me back in.
I know exactly where I'd be, stuck in the same cycle, cleaning up someone else's mess, erasing myself to keep everyone else happy.
But I chose differently. I chose myself. And if that makes me the villain in their story, so be it. Because in mine, I finally became the person I always should have been. The one who stopped saying yes just to keep the peace. The one who walked away.
Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.